pleasure to be here to talk to y'all a little bit about Go Virginia. Let me start with asking how many people have even heard of Go Virginia? Oh, good. I'm actually pleased. Usually
I said it a couple
Oh, okay. All right. How many people actually understand what it is? That's what I thought. So, okay. It's also known as the Chris Lloyd Full Employment Act of 2016. So, I'm just kidding. I actually feel like, you know, I've been going around the state giving this presentation to a number of people. I feel like the ugly kid with a pork chop around his neck. That's all we can get the dog to play with it. And the pork chop is I got $36 million to distribute around the state the next year. It's not me, it's the Go Virginia program. But a little bit about Go Virginia and kind of what it's all about and how it's going to impact y'all at the local level and what it seeks to achieve. The first I'll start off with, and I'm going to differ a little bit with one characterization that Jonah made of the Go Virginia effort, where he called it regionalism. We have gone out of our way to make sure it is not seen as regionalism. And that is because and it's a thing we have to be very careful with. We talk about it as regional collaboration. And this Go Virginia really was run as a political campaign. We ran it at McGuire Woods like a political campaign and actually did polling on a lot of themes and issues before any of this went public. And when you use the word regionalism in a poll in Virginia, what people hear is Kofi Annan, Ban Ki-moon, and Boutros Boutros-Ghali coming in the United Nations to take over your property rights. I'm dead serious. You would not believe it. You throw out various words in a poll to see what people think. And when you talk about voluntary collaboration, incentive-based approaches, job creation, that polls very well. When you talk about regional collaboration, regionalism, or joint schools, or joint planning, or property rights or eminent domain, your numbers just go, and you would have lost the General Assembly with a lot of those concepts. So I want to be clear that this is about regional collaboration. What is Go Virginia really trying to tackle, though? And unfortunately, I've got some fairly sobering facts to reveal to you. And that is, for those of you who have not noticed, the Virginia economy is kind of faltering right now, or it's kind of stagnant. And I don't mean that to be critical of what BDP does or the governor at all. I think what they're doing with economic development is, with the resources and the conditions we have in Virginia, is a very good job. Unfortunately, we've fallen behind a lot of our colleagues in this country. You know, usually in the economic recoveries and the swings and the ups and downs of the U.S. economy, Virginia does a little bit better than the rest of the economy when the economy is going up, and when the economy goes down, we don't go down as far as everybody else, and we bounce back a little bit more quickly. Unfortunately, that cycle was broken with the 2008 recession. And the whole economy went down, Virginia went down hard with it, and while the U.S. economy has started to come back, we're coming back a lot more slowly than the rest of the country. When last year there was the slowest employment growth in the country was Hampton Roads, only followed by Detroit and Michigan. Virginia had the 48th slowest economic growth in the country, only followed by DC and Maryland. Those are very sobering facts. And when you look at how that then translates into revenue that's available at the local level, revenue at the state level, any of you pay attention to what's going on at the state level right now, we're lagging even the very conservative budget forecast that was made by the General Assembly this year. We have a several $100 million gap opening in the budget that could be a significant issue to have to deal with in the 2017 session. And the reason is Virginia has relied on the last 50 years on the never-ending spigot of money that comes out of Washington for defense spending and federal government contracting. We just thought that machine was that faucet was just going to keep running forever and ever. And with the 2008 recession, that started to be turned off. And it's being turned off. And it's not through these massive BRACs or sequestration initiatives, but it's just the slow turn of the knob. And what's happening is, those of you from Southside or Southwest, you've seen economic stagnation for the past 20 years. I'm from rural Virginia, I'm from Louisa County. We've seen economic stagnation. Now it's hitting the Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia. And I know as much as those of you from the ROVA, the rest of Virginia, like to make fun of NOVA, Northern Virginia, you can't deny that's 40% of the state economy. And when you lose a series of $150,000 jobs in Northern Virginia, and you replace them, if you look at the top line unemployment statistics in Virginia, we're doing pretty good if you look at the unemployment rates. In fact, we've got more jobs in Virginia now than we had before the recession. Unfortunately, what we did is we took out A number of those jobs making $75,000, $100,000, $150,000 a year, and we now have a lot of people cleaning hotel rooms and making burritos at Chipotle. And so it takes 7 of those people making $25,000 a year to replace one of those jobs in Falls. Unemployment statistics don't track that very well, but it shows up very directly in your local tax receipts. It shows up in the state tax receipts. We've also, as you all well know, we have a fairly archaic or dysfunctional, whatever you want to call it, local government structure in Virginia. With this disjointed nature between the powers of local and of cities and counties, we're unique in that structure in Virginia. And so going to some of the points that Megan and Scott and others have made is localities don't do, there's so many disincentives to localities working together. And particularly around economic development, because economic development at the local level is very much looked at as a zero-sum game. If Amherst wins, that means Lynchburg loses. If Henrico wins, thank goodness Chesterfield lost. And that's just not the way economic development should be played. I'm one of those people that Megan referred to earlier as a site selector. And when I'm not running in Go Virginia, I'm traveling all across the country doing work for companies like Starbucks, Lockheed Martin, Smithfield Foods, Capital One, and locating their facilities all across the country. And yet, at the end of the day, we pick an individual community, and we're buying into a region. And Virginia historically has done a very bad job because of our very archaic, dysfunctional local government structure of not marketing ourselves as a region. And so the idea was, and then further, the third point is, for the past 20 years, Virginia's business community has been asleep at the switch. We just said, we trust our leaders, the business community has said, we're going to trust our leaders to run with this, and they're going to do it. And unfortunately, the politicians somewhat let the business community down in not addressing and thinking long term. You know, we've got this structure in Virginia. Remember, we're the last one-term governor state. And that, while that has some benefits, it means that Virginia's only thinking in 4-year cycles. So we're not thinking about those decisions of what's going to be helpful for Virginia 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So really what the whole concept behind Go Virginia is to encourage that regional cooperation, not regionalism, by providing incentives from the state to partner with localities to encourage voluntary collaboration around issues of economic diversification and workforce needs. Have the business leadership at the table with the legislature, providing this money to the localities to encourage them to work together on the issues they identify that are important to their economic future. So how is that going to work, essentially? So this program was put together, led by the business community, that resulted in a series of legislation and budget items that was passed by the General Assembly this year. The flagship program being what's called the GO grants. And I think, Jonah, if I'm correct, does everybody have a copy of this, or is it in the back?
You guys didn't get a copy yet.
Oh, okay. For those who don't know, pass this around, instead of you having to read long, boring legislation, unless you find that really exciting, you can see the bill numbers here if you want to read it, but we essentially reduced it to a picture that shows exactly how the Go Virginia structure works. But what we ended up getting this session was $36 million, which will be distributed in a variety of ways to regions. The state will be broken up into various regions, and they will be provided money, some of it on a per capita basis, some of it on a statewide competitive basis, to encourage those communities to kind of take a look inside themselves and say, what do we need to do to diversify our economy? And how can we change things in the direction that we're headed? And it gives them incentives for projects, whether it's around site development, workforce training, international trade, broadband initiatives, small business and entrepreneurship activities, worker training kind of activities. What can we be doing as a region collectively to change our economic future? Because the defense sector is shrinking, other traditional sectors are continuing to shrink. So what can we do as localities together to change our economic future? There's a series of steps in that, which this chart explains. There's a state board that's set up that has 24 members, appointed by a combination of the governor and the legislature, and then the business community is at the table. Then that's at the state level, and then there's a series of regions around the state, probably 9 is what we're going to come up with, that they each have a regional council, which helps set those regional priorities, understand what the problems are in the region, and evaluate programs that come to them for helping to encourage regional collaboration around economic diversification. In addition to that, that money will start to flow effective July 1, so just a few weeks away. The first tranche is about $500,000 per region to do a planning exercise and look at some skills gap analysis and other things, just kind of get organized. Then you start to tap the $30 million, which will of next fiscal year for dealing with a lot of these programs. In addition to the Go Grants program, which is the main flagship, there's another piece of legislation which a lot of people haven't paid attention to, and it's explained on the backside of your sheet. It's called the Collaborative Jobs Act. And what that does is it provides an incentive for those of you who understand local and state government finances. The way local governments get their money is off of property taxes. So we want projects from an economic development perspective that have a lot of capital investment. The state gets its money off the personal income taxes generated by the jobs that are created. So the state wants projects with a lot of jobs. What this bill does is it says that when regions or communities collaborate around economic development projects, if they jointly develop a business park or a training program or put in utilities to facilitate economic development, now the localities get 50% of the tax revenue that would have gone to the state. It goes back to the localities. That is something Virginia local governments have been dreaming of for decades, and we finally pulled it off. The idea that economic growth is rewarded back to localities, that they get that stream of revenue for up to 6 years coming off of an economic development project. That may not sound like it, a lot of money, or conceptually, let me run you through a model. You take a project of 200 jobs making $50,000 a year, that's a $10 million a year payroll. You run that through the state fiscal model, and that results in about $400,000 a year of tax dollars coming to the state just on the personal income taxes from that project. So 50% of it's coming back to the localities for 6 years. That's $1.2 million per project. And there are multiple projects you can get. So if you think about how that effort keeps over and over and over, what that can do to encourage regional collaboration in Virginia.
Can you back up just what's making that happen again?
There's legislation.
Did achieve that? What happened?
There was legislation that was passed.
Which was what legislation?
It's this bill, the Virginia Collaborative Economic Development Act, which is explained here. It's House Bill 846, Senate Bill 459. And the concept that the General Assembly finally bought into was the idea that instead of the localities in the state competing against each other for the types of projects, is let's go ahead and let the state release part of that money that they usually held back. And obviously it's not like the state's just, digging a hole and burying it and putting it somewhere. I mean, it's what's paying for K-12 education, Medicaid, and those kind of things. But said, let's use this money to encourage localities to work together for economic development. There are a couple other funding streams. There's about $100 million to encourage research and development at colleges and universities around Virginia. There's money for credentialing at our community college system. And I think you're going to see Go Virginia and the whole effort about how we retool and refocus our economic development programs around a regional approach is going to very much shape the study that's going on, the analysis of how the Virginia Economic Development Partnership is going to reorganize itself. There's the legislature mandated an analysis of that to occur during the next year. Something called JLARC, Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee, is right now doing a year-long study of BEDP. And I think you're going to see some of the models coming out of that are going to be very much influenced by what's going on with Go Virginia. I understand Go Virginia is a very complex program. It has a lot of moving parts to it. A lot of moving parts are just starting to come into focus, literally as we speak. The board is to be appointed in the next few weeks. There's a group that's going to be appointed, that's where I was earlier today, to set the guidelines and the rules of the road for this. It will be administered by the Department of Housing and Community Development, an agency many of you are very familiar with. We'll have a lot of the administrative back office supporting this. But my call to you is to be thinking about those projects that will be transformational for your region. Be thinking about what could you be investing in, broadband, international trade, small business, site development that would be helpful to your region, and bringing people together in order to move Virginia's economy forward. Again, I know this is a very complex program. I'll be around for a while to answer questions about this. We do have a website, govirginia.org. You can watch a beautiful 9-minute video on there and a lot of materials up there. I'll be glad to take questions once we finish. Thank you so much.